So this film follows Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, and this is his origin story basically. It follows how he's this surgeon who's very famous and successful, and then he gets into a terrible car accident that damages his arms, or his hands really. So he's forced to basically find any way to fix his broken hands. And so that fall on that path, he goes to Nepal and he finds the Ancient One, and he learns about the Sorcerer Supreme and the mystic arts, and you see how he becomes Doctor Strange. This movie, when I first saw it, I mean, there was already a lot of hype for this film simply because the visuals are incredible. There's something so creative and different, and it's like Inception times 100. I mean, that was a big selling point for this movie. And of course, Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange was also a big deal as well. I mean, the man's done Sherlock Holmes. He's been in Star Trek Into Darkness. He's done all these other sci-fi, fantasy, geek-related kind of projects. And now here he is doing another geeky kind of project, like I'm playing a Marvel superhero. And it's interesting too because it's different in that way as well. Just to see someone like Benedict Cumberbatch in a role like this. We have your typical actors in these other kinds of roles, like with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Ant-Man, Hulk. But seeing someone like Benedict Cumberbatch is like a different kind of actor taking on a role like a Marvel superhero. So it was neat to see something different in that way. When I first saw this film, as weird as this may sound, I felt underwhelmed by it. And the reason why I felt underwhelmed now looking back is because this movie came out the same year that Captain America Civil War did. And while I tried not going into this film expecting like some sort of continuation of Civil War, I just couldn't help, subconsciously I guess, I couldn't help going into it like that. I mean, earlier that year, we had Captain America Civil War, which was one of Marvel's best films at the time. Really big, successful, had some groundbreaking moments, some great character moments, just some like these big moments that played a big part in the MCU storyline overall. And now we have Doctor Strange, and it's obviously going to be a smaller film in comparison to Civil War. And I think the other thing that I found underwhelming is that it is an origin story, and I just felt like it didn't... See, it's weird. I feel like when I first saw this, I just viewed it on the surface level. I only viewed it from the surface. I just view it from plot point rather than all the details. Just strictly surface level plot point viewing of this film. And it felt like a generic plot. You know, it just felt like, okay, it's an origin story of a superhero. Marvel's done this before. He's a character. He goes through something. He gets his powers, becomes superhero, fights villain. And I think this is a point where I started to feel so used to the Marvel formula of the origin story. And that's why I love the sequels in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because the sequels continue the story. They progress the character. And I felt like with Doctor Strange, I was trying to think, what is it about his character that's uniquely different? Because Ant-Man was uniquely different. Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, all these characters, Guardians of the Galaxy's Chris Pratt, they're all uniquely different in some way. I mean, look at the recent one. Yeah, at the time, the recent ones were Chris Pratt and Guardians of the Galaxy and Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. And they were also origin stories, of course, but they still felt different in terms of their characters. Doctor Strange didn't feel different enough for me, I guess, because he kind of felt like Tony Stark 2.0. Just with his jokes, with his arrogance and ego. And also, I think another thing that really felt underwhelming for me with this film is I was really going into this film expecting, some drama. I mean, The story is about a man who is a successful surgeon, gets into a terrible car accident and loses his hands, and he's struggling to find a way to, like, that's kind of a dark thing to happen. But for some reason, watching this movie, I didn't feel the drama as much. I mean, I think about movies like Winter Soldier. I think about the origin stories of Iron Man, Captain America, all the way back. And I even think about Civil War, of course. And these films felt like they had drama and moments that really you felt the dramatic connection with the characters. They had humor and comedy because it's a Marvel film. That's their shtick. But they knew how to balance it out with the drama. Doctor Strange felt like I was going into expecting like a kind of a Batman. I mean, I was hoping the same kind of drama that's on the same level as like Batman Begins. But instead, I kind of got the usual origin story with a lot of humor and jokes and quippy one-liners mixed in here and there. And it felt like the quippy one-liners kind of took away from the drama. Something I love about the best example of is Guardians of the Galaxy. When you look at how that movie beautifully balances the drama and comedy. It knows how to have a dramatic scene in Guardians of the Galaxy and lets you sit with that scene. And then when you have funny stuff and jokes and comedy, it's there, but it doesn't feel like the jokes cut the drama. Doctor Strange felt like there were moments that were dramatic, and then a joke or here or there came in the way that kind of cut the drama. The perfect example is there's this scene when, spoiler alert, the Ancient One, played by Tilda Swinton, by the way, which I'll go into later, but I think that's very incredible. She dies, and Doctor Strange had a very emotional, character building kind of conversation with the Ancient One. And then you see Doctor Strange just sitting in the bathroom, washing his hands, and he realizes that he has to go and he has to save the day because we're near the third act of the film now. He's got to be the hero and face the villain. So there's a scene where the cape, long story short, the cape is magical and moves by itself. It has a mind of its own in a way. So the cape kind of goes around Doctor Strange, and it's kind of a superhero moment where he looks at himself in the mirror with the cape coming on to him, and cape just going around him and it's on his shoulder, and it's looking cool the way the cape is behind him, and he just looks at the mirror, and it's like a serious moment, he's about to he just had this great heartfelt conversation with the Ancient One who just passed away, and now he realizes the importance of being a hero and having to save the day and take out the bad guy. But in that dramatic moment, instead of letting the scene sort of sit in that moment dramatically, it immediately cuts to like a funny scene where the cape kind of wipes his tears. The cape just sort of wipes his tears in comedic fashion, and then Doctor Strange goes, "Stop it, please." And it is kind of funny, but it's like you couldn't. I felt like, and that's one example of a scene where I feel like they cut the drama a little too closely instead of letting the drama sit there. So that's why I felt coming out of this film a little underwhelming, but I don't think that's the movie's fault. I think it's Captain America Civil War was just a masterpiece that I can't help but be underwhelmed by the next Marvel film that comes out. And so, but I feel like if you watch this film on its own merit and not as a Marvel film, you will you will appreciate this film more and see how great this movie is. But when that Marvel logo comes on, it's like your mind just instantly starts thinking of all the other films. I mean, it's hard to follow up to that Marvel logo because so many great films that have changed the face of modern cinema has come after that Marvel logo. So every time you see that Marvel logo, there's like a subconscious expectation of greatness. And if a movie can't deliver on the same level of greatness the way Avengers, Winter Soldier, Civil War did, even Guardians of the Galaxy, then it's of course you're not setting yourself up for failure, but you are setting yourself up for underwhelmment. But as with all these Marvel movies go, where you feel a little underwhelmed the first time because you expected greatness and you got a pretty good film. I see the movie again and again. I've seen it multiple times now. I've seen it multiple times for rewatching for future films, and I like it better with each rewatch because I appreciate it for what it is. I see it in terms of how it fits into the overall Marvel Cinematic storyline. And now that I'm aware of the surface level plot, I can watch it now, not focusing on the plot, but focusing on the details. I love the way they take their time with Doctor Strange's character to let you be aware of who this character is. There's a great scene in the opening in the movie where we first see Doctor Strange and he's performing a surgery and he's cracking jokes with his staff, and you see him save a life as a surgeon. But you also see how he is kind of an arrogant guy. You see how he likes the fame and fortune. He'll treat patients, but he cares more about treating patients that help his career rather than treating all of his patients to save lives. And it's also interesting when you see how, you know, he is kind of Tony Stark in that way because he is rich, he is successful. But you follow his character arc and you see how he becomes vulnerable and damaged because he had that terrible car accident. My God, do they shoot the car accident? That car accident scene when he crashes and he damaged and he like his hands just like snap in a very disturbing manner. That's a PSA for never text and drive. I mean, that's pretty much how what happened is he was looking at an image instead of the road and he got into a car accident. I mean, that's a perfect PSA. That's a great movie to show kids to say, like, when you start driving, do not look at your screens because then you'll end up like Doctor Strange and you'll break your hands. So that was pretty smart. Another thing that I think this movie works is the visuals. Oh, God, the visuals. Something I do a lot with movies is I don't watch trailers anymore. I'll listen to trailers, but I'm never going to watch trailers because I feel like modern trailers give away too much of everything. So I went into this film not watching any of the trailers because it's a Marvel film. I'm going to see it in theaters no matter what. I don't need to see trailers. They've won me over enough times. So while I was underwhelmed by the story, I was blown away by the visuals. This movie has some of the most creative, innovative CGI visuals. This is the perfect film of how you use CGI to elevate a movie. So many people use CGI as like a shortcut to avoid having to put in any real work with telling a story or bringing something to life. This movie uses CGI in such a creative, I'm just thinking right now of the scene when he first meets the Ancient One and he badmouths the Ancient One. He says that, dude, this is all a bunch of BS. None of this is real. And then the Ancient One just grabs his head, puts her finger on his head, and just makes him go through this insane transient experience of all the crazy universe while she's talking about it. And it's just, my God, I feel like the people must have been on LSD or something. I mean, there's stories about the original creators of the comic book series of Doctor Strange who were apparently on drugs or on LSD or something, and that kind of helped with their creative process of creating the story. And now I see why. My God, the visuals in this film. It really is Inception times 100. It's incredible. And yeah, it's something where this is an IMAX movie for sure. It deserves to be seen in IMAX. And I mean, I'll give you this. This is not an iPhone movie. This is not a laptop movie. This is definitely, well, you got a big TV, you watch it on a big TV because it deserves that kind of treatment. I hope, sometime I want to see this in IMAX again. I hope sometime in the future or whenever they'll re-release these movies. I mean, they have to. These movies make so much money. They're iconic. But I'm sure they'll re-release in the future, and hopefully theaters will be more advanced and better. And I would love to see this 10 years down the line on like a 3D advanced theater screen, and they're putting Doctor Strange on, I would love to see it. It deserves to be seen on the big screen, and it's incredible like that. Another big thing about this movie that I admire is the cast. They have they have a very interesting and phenomenal cast of great, like, Oscar award winning actors, actors who you would never expect to be in movies like this. Like, yes, you have Doctor Strange. I mean, you have Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. And yeah, he's known for doing a lot of geeky stuff, including Star Trek and Darkness, but it's very cool seeing like someone who looked like him, someone of his persona, be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then you have Rachel McAdams, and it's cool to see her in a movie like this. Tilda Swinton, oh my god, she's like one of those actors who's known for doing artsy, art house, independent kind of films. I mean, her career is based on that, and it's so cool to see her do like a big budget blockbuster special effects film like this. And the beauty of it is she elevates a lot of the dialogue in this movie. You know, she's the Ancient One. She speaks with, she gives, her presence is filled with so much gravitas, and it's sincere. And I mean, that's what I love about Tilda Swinton. Like, she doesn't treat this as, oh, this is just a, you know, a CGI action kids film, I'm just gonna half-ass it. It's like, no. Tilda Swinton gives it her all, and she takes this dialogue, you know, about the Ancient One, about the mystic arts, and being this teacher to Doctor Strange and explaining to him how this world works in the universe and the multiverse, and she just speaks with so much sincerity and gravitas, and you believe everything she tells you, and it's admirable. I mean, that's why she's such a great actress, and why I love that Marvel is able to get someone like her and convince her to do something. I always love it when they get art house, independent kind of actors, and they bring them on board for these special effects films, because they elevate the film. And if you have really good writing, really good screenwriting and dialogue to give those actors, then they elevate these CGI films to the next level of not just being a CGI, but being a legitimately good movie. You also have, what am I forgetting? Chiwetel Ejiofor from 12 Years a Slave, and now he's in this movie too. And it's cool seeing him as this friend of Doctor Strange, and also another mentor. And it's seeing that how he's a teacher, his character's Mordo, and also, I mean, spoiler alert, I guess, but in the comics, he's Doctor Strange's villain, Mordo. But you see him, how he's a friend of Doctor Strange. But you see his character arc change from someone who is the good guy who would follow in the footsteps of the Ancient One, but then after realizations about the universe and tampering, and his ideas of black and white has become gray now because of the circumstances that take place in the movie. You see how he progresses from being Doctor Strange's friend to now he's just confused. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he fits in anymore. And then the end credits scene shows where you finally see Mordo have the revelation that there's too many sorcerers in the world, and he has to take them all out. And you see how he makes his first kill at the end, in the end credits scene, and he becomes the villain. And it's phenomenal like that. I mean, this movie, I love seeing, and then Benedict Wong is in this movie as well, and it's great. I mean, this movie had all these incredible actors. They put them in these movies, and it works, and it's beautiful, and it's action-packed. And oh yeah, and how can I forget? Mads Mikkelsen as well from Hannibal is in this movie as the villain. And his villain is kind of one note, and that's probably because we don't get to spend much time with him, because he's a great actor, and what little we see of his character arc, we see a lot of him in terms of doing the mystical stuff, but we don't see enough of his character arc. And that's always been a gripe with Marvel, is that whenever they do their origin stories, because they're so focused on elevating the hero, because this is the origin story, we have to make sure people like the hero, they kind of struggle with having a villain that can be interesting enough. They kind of have to make the villain kind of one-notish, so that way we can focus more on the hero. But it doesn't take away that Mads Mikkelsen still delivers and it's still cool to see an actor like him and doing all these fight sequences and CGI and this mystical arts with his hands, and it's just cool seeing that, and it works, and but yeah, this movie is seeing it in future rewatches. I appreciate more for those moments, seeing these really good actors be in a CGI action Marvel movie like this and elevate it to the next level because you have such great actors. And the visuals, they're what make this movie. I mean, the actors and the visuals, those are the two things that make this movie. It's not a great film in terms of story-wise. It is a generic story, but this is like a great film. This may sound weird, but it's a generic story, but it still knows how to do things that are a little different. It's just the overall story is generic. It's the same 3-act origin structure. And I feel like when you see that enough times, you're gonna lose that. It's not easy to be genuine and unique every time when you have to tell when you have to tell an origin story. There's only so many times you can be creative with that because you know how an origin story for a superhero film goes. But this movie really tries to be different. And now that after rewatching, I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that this movie explores the magic side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, something we haven't seen that much of before. This movie also explores, its end scene, spoiler alert, its third act is very different from your typical Marvel third acts. The third act is, usually Marvel movies have a third act where the hero fights a villain and it's a whole fight sequence, they all battle in a big city, and then the hero wins. In this third act, and I don't know how best I'll be able to explain this, but there's this being known as Dormammu. Think of like a giant, weird kind of face in space. And he's part of the dark dimension. And wants to consume Earth and bring Earth into the dark dimension to give eternal life. And it's interesting because it does address the concepts of death. It addresses the concept of, wouldn't you want to live forever? But then it shows you that an eternal life in the dark dimension is not a life worth living. And it's better to die and appreciate the good moments of life than to just live forever with no sense of purpose, with no sense of and any meaning. And I appreciate the film for doing that because it has moments, teaching moments like that. Doctor Strange goes through a character arc where in the beginning he's an arrogant guy who thinks highly of himself. He views the world from a very materialistic, external point of view and sees it all about money and wealth and fame and status. But throughout the film, you see him having to suffer from losing his hands. He can't be a surgeon, so he loses all the stuff that he valued. But throughout the film, he realizes the importance of it's not about him. That this is all just the material world, and it's about being the hero, and it's about serving the greater good of humanity and helping others rather than just trying to be better than everyone or trying to just be the best and it embraces that idea. This movie has great ideas and themes. I just feel like the story plot can be kind of rushed at points to tell the origin story rather than letting you sit with these moments. Even the training sequences, there's a great training scene where she takes Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is learning how to create a portal, because the portals are how they go from different places in the world. And the Ancient One is teaching Doctor Strange how to create a portal. And Doctor Strange is complaining because his hands are damaged. So how can he create stuff when his hands are still struggling? They're still recovering. And then there's a great scene where you see another sorcerer whose one hand, he has no hand. He has only one hand. And yet he's still able to conjure up some sort of mystical symbol and create a portal. So it shows that, and so the whole moral of that scene is showcasing how it's not, and then the Ancient One continues to explain how the way to create a portal is not to force it. You can't beat a river into submission. You have to learn to let the current take you and to run with it. And it's an interesting life lesson about how you can't force certain things in life. You have to learn to be like water and flow and let yourself submit to it so that you can work with it to achieve what you set out to achieve. And it's a very interesting life lesson. And it's great. And anyway, going back to the scene, it's great because the scene is where the Ancient One takes Doctor Strange to the top of the Himalayas. She opens a portal, takes him there, and then she just closes the portal and says, "Submit, Doctor Strange." And Doctor Strange's like, "Wait, what?" And then she closes the portal. And Doctor Strange is now left alone on the Himalayas, and he has to create the portal to be able to get back. And it's like, it's very like terrifying. Oh my God, he's gonna die. But then you see how he follows the Ancient One's teachings, and to learn to let yourself go, to lose yourself and calm your mind. And then that's how he's able to open up that portal, even in the most harshest of climates, and get back to the Ancient One. And so the movie has moments like this, but that's one moment, and a lot of moments feel like they kind of rush. I think the best example is Batman Begins has a training sequence with Batman, and that scene felt more epic and natural and fulfilling, while in Doctor Strange, it felt like it happened too fast in terms of training. But there are a few moments like that. That's why this movie is so conflicting, and why I feel like with rewatches, I'm better aware of the details and the moments where they do address character development, where they do address some emotional life lessons. It's just one of those films that's not edited well enough to really let you sit with these moments. It kind of cuts to the next scene where doesn't give you enough time to be emotionally invested in the moment. Those moments are there, they're just not long enough for you to be emotionally invested. But regardless, that's why I feel like with rewatches you can better appreciate the stuff. And then so that's why that film works. But anyway, going back to the last scene of the movie, the third act, how he defeats the villain is he creates a time loop, basically a moment in time. He faces off against Dormammu, which is this giant face in space. It looks cooler than I'm explaining it, but obviously he can't defeat him. You know, he's just a guy with these mystical powers, but Dormammu is literally the master of the dark dimension. And he's not. So the creative way he defeats Dormammu is by creating a time loop where it's just every time Dormammu kills Doctor Strange, he just comes back to life and he says, "Dormammu, I've come to bargain." And it's just every time Dormammu finds some creative way to kill Doctor Strange, he just keeps coming back to life. And it's this continued never-ending time loop that's going to happen for eternity. And it's interesting because they always have this beat where Dormammu's like, "You will die for an eternity again, you will fail." And then what's beautiful about this is it is very different from other third acts, because one, it's not just good guy versus bad guy fighting, it's something creative and different, but it's also addresses Doctor Strange's arc. He's always been about trying to be smart, successful, better than everyone, always being, the winner. And this is a creative way of how he will lose over and over and over again, because he's stuck in a time loop where Dormammu will always try to find creative ways to kill him. But because he caught Dormammu in this time loop, Dormammu can't escape now, and he's forced to relive this moment with Doctor Strange for an eternity. And the only way it'll end is if Dormammu bargains with Doctor Strange. And so that's how he defeats him. Doctor Strange says that you're my prisoner now, and you're going to be in this time loop. And even though I will fail and lose, and you will kill me every single time, you're still my prisoner, so the Earth will be saved. And it's truly seeing how Doctor Strange is willing to sacrifice his life in such a magically disturbing way. Can you imagine being in a time loop where you have to face off against the villain and he kills you every time, and then your Suffering is you just are reborn. You just come back again just to be killed again. Come back again just to be killed again, and to do that for eternity. That's disturbing as hell. But it's very creative, and he wins at the end of the day. I mean, Dormammu accepts the bargain, and the Earth is saved. And it's in a creative way too. So there's a lot of creative moments in there. Just like how he uses the time, the time stone to be able to turn back the clock of a destructive city. Like you have Hong Kong, and that's another thing I like. It's a different place like Hong Kong versus New York City or London. So it's in Hong Kong in the third act, and so he uses the time stone to sort of revert the damage done to the city. And you see this great shot of the city kind of going back and refixing itself because it's going back in time. And you see all these cool fight sequences between the sorcerers that's happening while the city is being put together and while time is going backwards. And so it's cool and it's creative and interesting to see that fight scene between these sorcerers happening while a city, instead of while a city is being destroyed, is while a city is going back in time to be fixed. And it's creative, and this movie has a lot of creative, genuine moments like that, and why I feel it's still a solid film, and why I'm more looking forward to the sequel, because Marvel's always done a great job with sequels in terms of continuing their story and progressing their characters. And I feel like these characters are so good that I want to see more of them, and I'm very excited. And they won me over with the creativity and ingenuity with this film. I have complete faith that their sequel to this movie will just do more, continue, progress, take into different creative ways, because they've already proved they did it with this movie.